Hey, so today let's talk a little bit about estrogen. Last week we talked about progesterone, and so this week I want to talk a little bit more about estrogen. And it is the main hormone that we think of as women as being our primary hormone. And so let's just talk a little bit more about it. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Michelle. I'm a family nurse practitioner, and I help people balancing their hormones and in particular with weight loss. So estrogen is a very important hormone to the female body, and although we think of it as a reproductive hormone, and it is, that's really not the best term probably that should be used for it because almost every single cell in our body has receptors for estrogen. So what that means is that it impacts all of our systems, not just our reproductive system. So some of the other things it does, obviously, it does help regulate our menstrual cycles, support pregnancy, and those sorts of things as far as our reproductive system goes. But there's a lot more that it does. So it's really important for our cognitive function with lots of receptors in the cells in our brain. So it helps with our memory, it helps us to learn, just overall brain health. Also, it helps with our bone density. So if you're like me, I just have a lot of risk factors for osteoporosis because I'm a small Caucasian female. Then that's something that's, I'm really thinking about as I'm getting older. So it does help maintain strong bones. It's also very important for our heart health. After menopause, the number one killer of men and women is heart disease. Heart disease is the number one killer overall, but women have a less risk prior to menopause. After menopause, that risk equals a man. Guess why? Because we don't have hardly any estrogen anymore to protect us. So, super important for our health. It also reduces inflammation. We know that the root cause of most of our chronic health conditions is inflammation. So, it's really important for that. It improves blood vessel function. Women often will have no trouble with their blood pressure and then they just hit a point and boom, it's high all of a sudden. And it's because we're losing that elasticity in our blood vessels. Probably root cause not having estrogen anymore. It's very important for your skin and your hair. You could probably Google some images. I've seen some, so I know you can, of women that continue with estrogen, like via hormone replacement therapy, and so have the estrogen, and women without estrogen. And women without estrogen appear much older than women that do have the estrogen. So, very important for that. And then it's very important for our urogenital system. So, vaginal lubrication, being able to have intercourse, and things like that. Sorry, yes. There's Siri popping in. Don't need you, Siri. Um, Now, estrogen starts to fluctuate in perimenopause. So, that can be 40s for sure, late 30s, early 40s. And honestly, the perimenopause period is the worst for ladies. If you can get through that to postmenopause, then it's a lot easier because you just have nothing. But the drastic fluctuations that are going on leading up to menopause can be the hardest. So that can be helped. We can help level those out and make that transition easier and not so symptomatic. So that's generally when that starts, late 30s, early 40s. Um, so the benefits of getting estrogen, in particular, it's best if you, of course, post hysterectomy, but also if you're menopausal or going into menopause, it's best to start your estrogen as soon as you go through that transition. The longer you go without it, the less benefit you will get. Now, there's studies out there that have women scared of taking estrogen because it increases your risk of breast cancer. That study, they've repeated, that wasn't a good study. It wasn't done well, and the results were not reported well. It just wasn't a good study. They have replicated that study that showed that, and I won't even go to the details but of all that because it's a whole other video. But they've replicated that and shown that that is not the case. And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? You think about when we're young, 12, 13, 14, 15, early, 20, 20s, that's when we have more estrogen than ever. And Do you know anyone with breast cancer that age? No. If you did, it would be uber rare. But when do we see breast cancer? In older women who don't have any estrogen. So that study that doesn't even make sense. There was actually a study I was going to bring up. It was done by some Yale physicians, and they evaluated the effects of not having hormone replacement in postmenopausal women aged 50 to 59 who had undergone hysterectomies. And their findings found because they didn't take estrogen, that could have contributed to up to 90,000 deaths that could have been prevented from breast cancer in those women. So there's women are being hurt because of that poor study and not getting the new information out there. So just something to keep in mind I was like that too. So if you're one of those. And then other things about that I hear a lot from patients is, well, I had my levels checked and the doctor said they were good. And a lot of times this is not just hormones, this is all of our labs really. You can have normal levels, but they may not be optimal, and they may not be optimal for you. There's a wide range there in lab values. And so what's good for one person may not be best for you. So just keep that in mind too. And with estrogen in particular, it needs to be balanced with progesterone. So your estrogen normal may look normal, but if it's not in balance with your progesterone, you will have symptoms of estrogen dominance. I'll probably do another video on that one separately. There's a lot of other things also besides just our normal physiology that women go through with their estrogen levels, but there's other things in our environments that impact our hormone levels. So plastics, in particular, that just like Tupperware and stuff like that, those are hormone disruptors, and can alter your hormones with repeated exposure to those toxins. Also, pesticides and herbicides, and you think about, well, I don't eat those, but if you have food that's non-organic and that sort of thing, that's how we get those into our system. Processed foods and sugar in particular, those really can help worsen your hormone regulation. And then chronic stress, because it impacts our cortisol. Who doesn't have stress these days, right? So a lot of things. So I'm going to link below. We have a quiz that you can take. It's just a free, simple few question quiz that kind of goes over if you have potentially some symptoms that you're experiencing that could be related to your hormones. So I'll link that for you below. If you have any questions, just let me know.